Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biblio Files. This is the program on AADL TV where we take a few minutes each week to discuss a new book topic where we each have a book pick relating to that topic. I am Lucy, and I'm here as usual with Christopher and Amanda. And today we have a special guest, Lauren, which is very exciting. And the topic that we are discussing today is a favorite fantasy book. So, Amanda, what did you pick?
So first off, I'll say that I don't read a lot of fantasy, unless it's like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or something. And I was trying to gather a book for today, and I pulled a book that I read many years ago, and I was inspired to reread it this past weekend. And the book, it's a teen fiction book. It's called A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. And the book was published in 2011, and I probably read it shortly after that. So I really needed a refresh. It's a quick read. It's a dense read. So this book is set, in modern day England. And our main character is a 13-year-old boy named Connor. And Connor is in middle school. His parents are divorced. His mother is being treated for cancer. His dad lives in America. The bullies at school pick on him and his bald mom. And he has a lot of pent up anger and fear and aggression for everything that's going on in his house and with his mom. And then the monster calls. The monster is this giant tree outside of his window. This is the fantasy element. And the tree is sort of a tree. It's part human. It's part monster. And this tree ends up speaking to Connor. And over these nightly nightmares that Connor has, he ends up talking to the tree. And it's a very quick read. It's heavy because you can feel Connor's, how he feels. He's so angry and sad and mad, and he won't talk about what's happening in his home and all the family changes that are happening with his mom being sick. It's a really good book. I read it this past weekend, and it's somber. It's dark. The book also has these wonderful illustrations throughout it, and you're not going to get to see it well through here, but these beautiful black and white illustrations just strewn throughout it. And the text is very kind of spread out too, so it is a quick read. It's teen fiction. It was made into a movie in, I don't know, maybe 2015 or something. I did watch the movie, and I don't remember enough of it to compare it to the book. It's one of those things that kind of just exited my mind, but I would recommend reading the book. Just be ready for a book that's a little bit darker, and it does have a really good ending, and it's a good book. It's a good book. Teen fiction, A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Christopher, what did you pick for fantasy?
Well, reading fantasy is really an impossible task because I always want something that's just like Lord of the Rings, but if it's too close to that, I feel like it's a ripoff. So you really cannot win with me. So I have read some good fantasy, but that's for a different episode. What I picked, I went back to some old classics, which are the Oz books. This is The Marvelous Land of Oz. It's the second or third Oz book. And I feel like these books are often ignored today. They are so creative. They're so weird. They're so amazing and so fantastical. And they're just so much fun to read. I read so many of them when I was in middle school, and they're just amazing. This particular book starts off with the witch Mombi or Mombi, I don't remember, and the powder of life, and all these amazing things happen. This sawhorse comes to life. It's the origin story of Jack Pumpkinhead. Then a girl army revolts and tries to take over the Emerald City. There are so many adventures. There's the Woggle Bug, which is a bug that was being magnified during a lecture, and there was a big commotion, so the bug escaped in its magnified form, so it's a giant bug now. So, inanimate objects come to life. There are all kinds of creatures, and it's just one bit of fantastical happening after another. The end is super modern and surprising. and I'm not going to give it away, but it touches on a lot of really interesting issues that are surprisingly relevant to today. So I love these books. They are so colorful and so much fun. And those are the Oz books by L. Frank Baum, and the illustrations are beautiful. Last thing I'll say about this is if you're a fan of Henry Darger, who was an outsider artist, his art and stories are very similar to these Oz books. You can see there was a lot of influence from these books. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay. Lauren, what do you have for us today?
Yeah. First of all, fantasy books I haven't widely read them, but I have a few near and dear favorites, and it was really hard for me to pick one to really focus on today. But I went for one of the Bartimaeus books by Jonathan Stroud. It was published about 11 years ago, I think. Before I start yakking about it, I just wanted to ask you all how you would pronounce this word.
Jen.
Jen. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to go with that. So Bartimaeus is a jinn, and Bartimaeus is this incredibly old spirit who gets summoned by magicians who happen to know how to summon him. And so Bartimaeus is, in this particular book, it's called The Ring of Solomon. And there's a super nice holographic cover. He finds himself in Jerusalem in 950 BC. And Jerusalem at that time is ruled by the mighty king Solomon. And so basically Bartimaeus is this, there's, as you probably are aware, there are rules to magic. Magic isn't just this, chaotic thing. There are rules that you have to follow. And one of such rule is you have to learn how to summon a spirit. And so, and there's also a hierarchy of spirits. So Bartimaeus is this sort of mid-level demon. He's higher than an imp. Imps are completely stupid, and he's lower than an Ifrit. Ifrits are these incredibly powerful, almost just totally terrifying beings. So Bartimaeus is somewhere in the middle of this to be a little better than he actually is, and he tries to come off as more powerful and cunning than sometimes he is. Although he is incredibly witty, he's incredibly sarcastic. He's also very he's got a good heart to him, and so he's just this wonderful character. And he finds himself in this particular book summoned by an unlikely magician named Asmira, who is a part of the royal guard in Sheba. And Sheba finds itself somehow being kind of under attack, or at least threatened by, it would appear to be, Solomon himself. And I won't give anything away, but things are not quite as they seem there. So Asmira is tasked to go to Jerusalem and, of course, assassinate Solomon or die trying. And along her way, she runs into Bartimaeus, and there's just amazing back and forth there. And I think I just want to focus on, like, Bartimaeus, the jinn, is really the star here. And I mean, he's great. I mean, I think he likes to show, he likes to, again, like, just put himself out there in ways that he wouldn't, or he ends up acting in a way that I think it runs counter to how he presents himself. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of yakking, but the ending is really, really satisfying. I mean, you find yourself as the reader thinking, how is this possible? Like, Solomon is this great guy we know, or seemingly powerful king. How could he ever be murdered? And we know that he won't be, right? And Asmira also, it seems like this wonderful character. You're rooting for her too. Like, she's just trying to do her job and protect her homeland. And you find yourself, of course, always rooting for Bartimaeus and wanting to know, how is he able to pull this off? because he into this crazy plot to kill this omnipotent seeming king, Solomon. So anyway, it's just a wonderful, wonderful book, a rollicking adventure. Sounds like kind of in a similar channel to what Christopher was talking about with the Oz books. So if you're looking to have some fun with just immersing yourself in an awesome adventure and learning a little bit about magic along the way and falling in love with a djinn, read this book.
That sounds great. All right. So the book that I picked, and I actually don't read a lot of fantasy, but I did pick this young adult book called The Merciful Crow by Margaret Owen. And this is the first in a duology. And the basic premise, like the elevator pitch, is a usurped prince, a deadly plague, and magic harnessed by a collector of human teeth. So that's sort of like very intriguing right away. The book is about a girl named Fi, who is a mercy killer. And what this means is during the plague, she and her other mercy killer group go around and they kill people basically who are at the very end of their life or suffering from the plague. And the world that Fi lives in, called Sabor, is a caste system. And the mercy killers are at the very bottom. All the castes are named different birds. And the mercy killers are crows. And the caste system is very complex. Like everyone who is in a certain caste is given a birthright that provides them with an ability. Only the crows, who are the lowest caste, do not have a birthright. So the way that they get any ability is that they harness magic from human bones. And the easiest bones to carry around with you if you need to harness magic are teeth. So they all have these little bags of teeth. It sounds creepy, but it's actually just really, the world that this author has built is amazing. So this caste system is super complex. There's like vultures whose ability is to track things. There are gulls who can summon winds. There are castes that she barely gets into in this book. And she said that she was inspired to create this caste system by what she read about medieval executioners, is that they were exiled from society. And so she was just fascinated that the people who had to do that job that society felt they needed to happen were then exiled because no one wanted to do it. So this basic story is Fi gets separated from her band of crows. She has to help save this crown prince and his bodyguard. And so it's this sort of band of three. They are trying to outwit a queen. It involves Fi using her bag of teeth a lot to create magic. And the characters are amazing. Fi herself she's complex. She's flawed for sure. Like sometimes she's not likable. She's very funny, but you're always rooting for her. The biggest piece of this book, though, is the world that Margaret Owen created. And she said, like, in order to build a world for this book, the question that she asked is, what does this society believe? So that means that she started by creating a religion and politics first, and then that led her to a caste system that created this divine meritocracy. Like you just get what you are earned by where you live where your caste is. So then with those pieces in mind, she could think about, how does this affect taxes, land, ownership, resource allocation, and all of those things. And then once that world was built, then she could put characters in it, because she knew this is how this character is going to be motivated. This is how this character is going to act based on where they live in that world. And so I just have not encountered such a well thought out world where there are machinations and pieces that maybe don't even apply to this specific story, but are there because that's the reason why the characters do what they do. So I loved this book. I loved the characters. The author also she's an artist. So like she did the cover, there's illustrations throughout. It's it because it's a caste system, it seems relevant no matter what, because you're talking about divisions in society. So it's hard to sum up because it's so complex, but I highly recommend it. It's a teen book, as I said before, The Merciful Crow by Margaret Owen. So.
Wow. Well, I'll just say that I think one thing that can be daunting about fantasy are these elaborate worlds and systems and characters. It's a lot to keep track of. So for me, and I feel like my book was the outlier because all the three of the other books that we talked about today had such complex worlds and characters. But I feel like that's something with fantasy, and once you find a book or a world that you like and want to be in, you want more. You want to read all 7 of the series. You want to read all 4 of the books because you love those characters in the world, because they are, like Lucy was saying, they're so detailed and thought out. It takes time to come up with all of that. So I'm inspired to find some other worlds to go into after today. So thanks, you guys.
Yeah, it's an amazing process, I think. So.
For sure. Yeah. I just wanted to say really quickly, it was interesting. Like Amanda, your book seems like an outlier in another way too, where it's a lot more, maybe more serious than the other 3 books that were more maybe adventurous. And that's interesting to me too. That's definitely, I don't know, that's not a tone. I'm not very wide read in that I've really encountered very much at all. So that inspires me to kind of dip my toe into a different type of a fantasy book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think fantasy as a genre, it is a genre, but then it can be pretty widespread as far as what else is, how do you define something as fantasy? So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And as always, we love to hear what you're reading. So if you have a favorite fantasy, we would love to know about that, or a fantasy that you're hoping to read. You can leave a comment for us, and you can like this video and subscribe to our channel. And we will see you next time on our next episode. Thanks.